Let me describe a couple to you, and as you listen, I want you to be honest with yourself about how familiar this sounds. They're both working professionals. She's in marketing, earning around $62,000 a year. He's in IT, pulling in about $71,000. Together, that's a household income north of $130,000, top quarter of American households. On paper, they're winning. They should be building wealth. They should be maxing out retirement accounts, taking real vacations, sleeping well at night. Instead, they're stressed. They're living close to paycheck. Maybe they have a month or two of expenses saved if they're being generous. When the car needed an unexpected repair last month, it didn't come out of savings, it went on a credit card. They're exhausted. They both work full-time, sometimes more. Weekdays blur together. Dinner is late, rushed, or ordered in. They see each other for a few tired hours before collapsing into bed. And here's the part that really matters. They did everything right. The degrees, the careers, the marriage, the shared finances, the house in a decent school district. So why does it feel like they're drowning? Why does a household making over six figures feel this financially fragile? If you've ever looked at your combined income and thought, we make too much money to feel this broke, then stay with me because this is where things start to click. I'm the grandma investor, and I've watched this pattern repeat itself for decades, which is why I want to slow this moment down. Because when people see a story like this, their first instinct is to blame themselves. They assume they must be bad with money, undisciplined, or secretly irresponsible. But that explanation doesn't actually fit the facts. These are smart people, hard-working people, people who followed the rules exactly as they were written. And yet, the numbers don't line up with how their lives feel. So here's the question that quietly sits under all of this, the one most households never stop to ask out loud. If earning more money was supposed to make life feel safer, why does it feel like the pressure keeps increasing instead? Why does every raise seem to disappear the moment it arrives? Why does financial stress grow even as income grows? When a pattern shows up this consistently, it's not a personal failure. It's a signal that something structural is happening beneath the surface. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. For a long time, we were sold a very simple story. One income is good, two incomes must be better. It sounds obvious, it feels mathematical. If one person making $50,000 can support a household, then two people making $50,000 each should mean comfort, security, and money left over to build real wealth. That belief became the backbone of modern family finances. But here's the part most people never stop to question. What if the problem isn't that two incomes don't add up, but that everything around them quietly rearranged itself to absorb both? What if the second income didn't create safety, but instead erased the margin that used to protect families? Because that's exactly what began to happen. Costs didn't just rise, they repositioned themselves. Housing, childcare, healthcare, transportation, all of it slowly recalibrated around the assumption that two adults would be working, earning, and exhausted. So instead of two incomes creating freedom, they became the new baseline just to stand still. And once that baseline locked in, stepping back stopped being an option. This is where the math still looks right, but the lived experience feels wrong. To understand how we got here, we have to step back for a moment, not out of nostalgia, but for contrast. In the 1,970 seconds, the typical middle-class American household ran on a single primary income. One person worked outside the home, the other managed everything inside it. And here's the part that surprises people today, that one income was usually enough, not barely enough, actually enough. Housing took up a much smaller share of income. Public schools were funded well, regardless of zip code. Healthcare was simpler. Childcare wasn't a line item because someone was already home. But the most important difference wasn't the size of the paycheck, it was the presence of margin. There was a backup plan built into the structure. If the breadwinner lost a job or got sick, the stay-at-home parent could enter the workforce. That second income wasn't being used yet, it was waiting. It functioned like insurance. As two-income households became the norm, that insurance policy got cashed in permanently. The backup plan became the default operating mode. And once that happened, families didn't just lose flexibility, they lost resilience. That's the trade most people never realized they were making. This is the moment where the numbers stop being abstract and start getting uncomfortable. Because when families feel stuck, they often assume the second income must be the thing holding everything together. But when you slow the math down, you see a very different story. Let's say one partner earns $70,000 a year and the other earns $50,000. On paper, that second income looks substantial. It feels like the safety net. Start with taxes. Because of progressive tax brackets, that additional $50,000 doesn't get taxed gently. By the time federal income tax, state tax, and payroll taxes are accounted for, a meaningful chunk is gone before it ever hits the checking account. That $50,000 quickly looks more like $35,000 in take-home pay. Now, add childcare. In much of the U.S., full-time daycare averages around $15,000 per child per year, and far more in high-cost areas. That alone can wipe out nearly half of what's left. Then come the costs no one advertises. A second commute means more gas, more maintenance, faster vehicle depreciation, sometimes an extra car entirely. It's not unusual for that to quietly cost another $7,000 to $8,000 a year. And then there's exhaustion. Two adults working full-time means less energy for cooking, cleaning, repairs, and planning. So money fills the gaps that time used to cover. Delivery instead of groceries, prepared meals instead of cooking, services instead of sweat equity. These aren't luxuries, they're survival purchases. Add it all together, and something sobering happens. That $50,000 second income may be contributing only a few $1,000s a year to the household, sometimes less. Someone is working full-time, missing dinners, running on fumes, and the household is barely netting anything for it. Here's the part that turns this from an uncomfortable realization into a true trap. Once a household starts making decisions based on two incomes, those decisions harden into fixed costs. The mortgage isn't sized for flexibility. It's sized for maximum approval. The cars are financed on the assumption that both paychecks keep coming. The school district, the neighborhood, the monthly obligations, all of it is calibrated to a world where nothing ever goes wrong. And life doesn't work that way. Banks don't ask whether you'll still be healthy in 5 years. They don't ask whether burnout will hit, or whether a parent will need care, or whether a child will need more attention than planned. They look at combined income and say, "You qualify." And technically, you do as long as both incomes flow forever. This is why families can do everything right and still feel trapped. The moment one income falters, the household doesn't just lose earnings. It loses stability. There's no reserve role to step into, no dormant income to activate, because it's already been spent. The backup plan was used to pay the bills. That's how the door closes quietly, not with reckless spending, but with perfectly reasonable decisions made in a system that left no margin for error. This is where I want to shift the question, because focusing on income alone keeps people looking in the wrong direction. I'm not interested in how much a household earns. I'm interested in how much shock it can absorb. That's the difference between looking wealthy and being secure. Real risk isn't earning less than your neighbors. Real risk is building a life that collapses the moment something unexpected happens. Ask yourself this, honestly. If one income disappeared for 3 months, not forever, just temporarily, what breaks first? Is it the mortgage, the childcare bill, the car payments, or is it your sense of control? Most families don't like sitting with that question, because it exposes how thin the margin really is. And margin, not income, is what determines resilience. When you start seeing finances through this lens, something important changes. The goal stops being maximizing lifestyle. It becomes preserving optionality. Because optionality is what turns money from a source of stress into a source of stability. This is where most people expect me to say something unrealistic, like one partner should quit working, or that families should dramatically downsize overnight. That's not what this is about. A one-income foundation doesn't mean living on one income today. It means designing your fixed costs so that one income could carry them if it had to. There's a difference. And that difference changes everything. Most households do the opposite. They treat both incomes as permanent, guaranteed, and untouchable. They buy the house two incomes can qualify for. They take on the payments two incomes can support, and once those decisions are locked in, neither person has room to breathe. Both incomes become mandatory. That's not security, that's dependence. A one-income foundation flips that logic. Housing, transportation, and non-negotiable bills are sized conservatively, intentionally, so one income could keep the lights on. The second income, then, stops being structural. It becomes strategic. It goes toward emergency savings, retirement accounts, debt reduction, and long-term investing. Every dollar saved or invested is buying back flexibility. This approach doesn't feel flashy. In fact, it often looks like you're falling behind. You pass on the nicer house. You keep the older car. You resist upgrades that everyone around you seems to afford. But quietly, something powerful is happening. You're building a system that can bend without breaking. And over time, that system starts working for you instead of against you. Here's the part that reframes this entire conversation, and it's the part I want you to sit with for a moment. What families traded away wasn't comfort or convenience. They traded flexibility. In exchange for bigger homes, newer cars, and the appearance of success, they gave up the ability to absorb a hit without everything unraveling. And the hardest part is that the trade didn't feel like a choice. It happened gradually, one reasonable decision at a time, in a system that quietly rewarded expansion and punished restraint. Two incomes didn't fail families. They were simply spent before they ever arrived. And once both paychecks were fully committed, there was no room left for uncertainty, change, or rest. The families who actually thrive in the long run aren't the ones earning the most. They're the ones who preserved margin, protected their backup plan, and refused to size their lives to their maximum earning potential. Because in the end, wealth isn't what your life looks like when everything goes right. It's what holds when something goes wrong.